Welcome to this short tutorial on how to sculpt a robot in MasterpieceVR. Okay, so first off we'll be going into cube properties, and in here we can change the resolution of our scene to the highest level that our system allows. I find that for me at least 7 times works well. Once that is done, we can start the work on our robot. I open up the tool guides and I place them off to the side. I turn on the mirror plane, and as you can see now, every sculpt stroke that I do is mirrored on the other side. Next up we head into the draw menu. In here we select basic clay tools and start building out the shape of the head. In this case I'm using the sphere brush and the cube brush, and I'm using a combination of subtractive and additive sculpting. All in all, which makes for a very intuitive and fast way of concepting out ideas like this. By using the color tools, I'm able to quickly test out various color schemes, and as you see here, I can also make basic textures directly in the vertex colors of the sculpt. These colors are exported along with the model and can be set up in programs like Blender or Maya or Cinema 4D. Once I'm happy about the shape and colors of the skull, it's time to lock down the sculpt by converting it to a mesh element. By doing this, we can start to work on other elements, and we're making sure that we can individually move the elements around. These mesh groups will also translate in the export, so we'll be able to, in motion, select the head, the upper body, the torso, etc. So head into the select menu, select clay and a cube as tool shape, select all of the head, and then select convert to mesh. Once that's done, we can start working on the jaw of the character, and since we're working in clay here, this won't affect the head shape, which is now a mesh instead of voxeled clay. So as you see here, I use a technique where I block in a big shape and then I kind of carve my way into that using the basic shapes in the program. Now and then you'll see me changing the overall proportions of the basic tool shapes. And the way you do this is you press the little arrow button that's underneath your right hand controller. Once that's open, you'll be able to drag the shape on various angles to make it larger or to change its overall proportions. Once the jaw is done, we go into the select menu again, make sure clay is selected, and we select the cube selection tool. I make a selection that encompasses all of the jaw, and I select convert to mesh. Make sure that the shape of the basic tool is reset to default when you make a mesh selection. So we convert it to a mesh, and we can then move on to start sculpting the neck of the character. The rest of the process of making this character is basically the same, so I'll be time-lapsing through this, and I might jump in and say a bit about things that might stick out in terms of the process that I've shown you here. So another very useful technique is to make a selection of an element like the one I've sculpted here, And then by copy and pasting that element, I can quickly add details to the overall look of the model. You'll also see me using the smooth tool now and then to smooth out some of the harsh transitions between the shapes of my model. This can give a very nice effect when sculpting stuff like the robot here, where we need to have a good variation between hard edges and soft edges to break up the design a little bit. Now and then you'll see me sculpting parts of the model a bit distant from the main model itself. And the reason for this is that sometimes it makes sense to make an element like this, copy paste it, and then keep the original clay element at hand here, so I can use it for several different things. So the piece that I'm sculpting here, I'm using that for both the upper and lower arms of the model, as well as the hand, the fingers, and both legs and feet actually. So I can reuse this element by just changing up small things like the proportions. I can sculpt a little bit into the model, and by doing this I can save a lot of time compared to having to do everything from scratch. So as you see here, I just changed the proportions a little bit, and I could then use the element as the lower arm of the model. Alright, so we've just about come to the conclusion of this part of the tutorial. And once your model is close to finished, you can take it into the view mode that you find in your tool palette. And in here you'll be able to place 3 lights and see the model with light and shadow. So this should give you a good idea of what the model might look like in a rendering application. So anyways, I hope you learned something from watching this tutorial, and we'll continue on with the next part of the tutorial that will be in motion. So head into the file menu and select export. Select export as an OBJ file and name your file.